Hello, Authentic Culture. Markeisha Tanoy here. I have a word for you guys. I have a fun word prepared. It came to me yesterday when I was driving, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to share it immediately. I'm learning to just share things as soon as I get them when God gives me one of those aha moments, one of those prophetic words. So it's going to be about us micromanaging God. So I have a couple of scriptures I'm going to throw at you. So if you have a pen and paper next to you, take notes or write on your phone. Um, so I'm just going to jump in, and this is about waiting on God. So yes, it's about micromanaging, but it's also about you waiting on God. So I'm just going to jump in. Yesterday, I got a analogy when I was driving. Where was I? I was driving home, and I heard God so clearly say, because I was thinking about myself, and I was like, so sidebar, sidebar. This message is for anyone who's waiting on something, but more in particular, I know for the most part my following are young women that are waiting to get married, young women that are waiting to um, have babies with their husband and have this beautiful life with their husband. And we are in a season of kingdom marriages. Um, we're in a season of God is preparing people to get married. And I'm just chewing on these things, thinking about these things like, okay, God, when is my turn? And I'm not saying it like I wasn't waiting patiently. I'm still waiting patiently. I know God's going to do it because God's not a man, he shall not lie. I know he's going to bring someone to me. But it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, God, when's this going to happen? And then it hit me. I got this epiphany. I got this vision of a baker. So the vision I got, and I hope I'm not doing this a disservice or disjustice, but the vision I got was of you ordering a custom cake and you waiting on the baker to make it. And I got this vision, and I see like a grocery store, and I see a bakery, and I see all the beautiful cakes in the window on display of like order this, order this, order that, and then you going and you telling the baker like, hey, I want to order an XYZ, and it needs to be blah 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 blah, right? And then the baker, they take your information down, they say, okay, we'll call you when it's ready. Here's our information if you have any questions, yada yada yada. You go home, you live life, you wait for the baker to call you, you go and you pick up your cake, and then or whatever you ordered, and then you have your cake, whatever, right? But unfortunately, some of us are going to the bakery, and we are we are bugging them. We're calling, hey, are you making the frosting right? Did you mix enough eggs in that? Did you put enough frosting on the side? You're using this color blue, not this kind of blue, right? We are micromanaging. And the vision I got was you wouldn't micromanage a baker. You wouldn't call a bakery and say like what I just said, like, oh, did you use enough eggs? Did you use like the small eggs, or did you use the large eggs? Or what kind of flour are you? You would not do that. You would trust that they're doing their job because they're the professional. That's what they do, and you're paying them for that service, right? So just like we would not call the bakery and we would not be demanding like, well, what kind of icing are you using? Did you use it like this? Did you beat the eggs by hand, or did you use a hand mixer? Like, just like we would not do that, we would be absolutely insane trying to tell a baker how to do their job. Why do we do this with God? Why do we micromanage God? We are always calling on God, like, God, are you doing this right? Well, I don't see it being done. It should be here by now. So maybe it's not going to happen. If God said it, believe it. If God told you a promise, if God gave you a promise, believe it. Numbers 19, 23, 19. God is not a man, he shall not lie, nor change his mind. So God's not going to one day wake up and be like, oh man, I forgot I told her I was going to give her a XYZ. That's not God. God is not going to do that. God's not going to wake up one day and be like, never mind, she got on my nerves yesterday, so I'm not going to do it. That's what we do as humans. We as humans think that way. That's not the way God thinks. So we have to understand that when God says something, he's going to do it. So I wanted to break down this baking analogy, right? So I wrote, we are ordering something special. And this example is specifically for women that are waiting to be married, waiting to become one with someone. We are in a season where God is allowing marriages to happen in a suddenly, just because look at the world around us. We are coming to an end, unfortunately. And I'm not trying to be funny. I know I laughed. It's not funny, but I'm also not trying to be like dim either. Like, I don't think an apocalypse is going to come tomorrow or anything like that. But if we look at the world around us, like, he's on his way back. Like, the world is crazy. So God is preparing marriages rapidly. Those who have been waiting so long are going to be getting married in a suddenly. And with that being said, our marriage is a special order. So going back to the analogy, and this is why it's so good, because God talks to me in pictures. So going back to the analogy, I thought, okay, if you're going to a store and you know you need a cake or a cupcake, insert your favorite dessert. You know you need one of those, right? There are plenty of them laying around. You can go to the bakery and they have sections and cakes on top of cakes. You can buy Hostess cakes. You can buy Little Debbie's cakes. Or the bakery has cakes that were made, I don't know, a couple days before. The person never came up to get their order. So there are cakes there. It might say happy birthday on it and you needed a cake for an anniversary, or it might say way to go, John, on the cake, and you needed the cake to, like I said, for an anniversary or a birthday gift or going away party or whatever that might look like. There are cakes that are there. And if you really want a cake, you can take one of those cakes with you. They're going to be cheaper. They're going to be, I wouldn't say stale, but they're probably not as fresh because they've been sitting a while. And when I heard that analogy, it made me think of what I was just saying about dating. Let's be real. We can get out there and we can date anyone that we want to. You guys are beautiful women, so you can have anyone you want to, right? But you are waiting on that special delivery. Right now, it's not the time to take just anything. And that's because you waited too long. You did not wait until you were in your 20s and your 30s, whatever. You didn't wait this long for you to just take anything. You have to wait on that special order because it's just to your liking. Yes, you might see a cake. You might see, well, I want it white frosting, but do you know if it's buttercream? Do you know if it's whipped? You might not like whipped. Do you know if it's vanilla icing or if it's almond icing? You do not know. You just look at it and say it's white, or you look at it and see that it's chocolate. You know what I mean? I also wrote it's on a discount. And when I wrote discount, it made me think of the counterfeit. There's always going to be a counterfeit before the real one comes. And the counterfeit is the one that looks like the one you want. The counterfeit is the one that appears to be real, just like a counterfeit dollar. If you hold it up in the sun, that's the only way you can see it, when you hold it up in the light. And that's a whole nother message of the light, Jesus being the sun. But if you hold it up, you can see if it's real or not. But holding it down here, holding it next to another a $1 bill and another and a counterfeit $1 bill, looking at it with the naked eye, they look the same. But once you start to examine it, that's when you can start to tell that it's the counterfeit. So going back to my cake analogy, or insert your favorite dessert, um, there's always going to be counterfeit first. And at the grocery store, think of like the cakes that are sitting there first. Think of that as the counterfeit. Think of that as, you know what? Okay, I can go home with one of these and it is a cake and it might taste delicious, but it's not what you're craving. It's not what you're wanting. It's not what you've been needing, right? And that's the same thing with the counterfeit. That's the same thing with settling for the wrong person. You can go out and marry someone right now. You can get on a dating app. You can go out with the hottest thing that just wants XYZ from you. You can go out with someone who might not be as attractive and who might be desperately wanting to be with you, and you guys can get married tomorrow. But that's not what God has for you. That is why we are at the store and we have to put in that custom order, because God told us we are not supposed to be unequally yoked. And when I was reading about being unequally yoked, and we hear that all the time, and I think it's in First Corinthians, I think. Don't quote me. But when we hear about being unequally yoked, the first thing that comes to mind is you being a Christian should not be with a non-Christian, right? We think I can't be with a Mormon, I can't be with a Buddhist, I can't be with someone who does Hindu, like whatever that religion might be, right? That's what we think of when we say unequally yoked. But what we have to understand is unequally yoked It's so far before, it means so much more than just him loving Jesus. You can't be with someone who is not your equal, who's not your even. And I'm not saying to look down on people. I'm not saying to not give people tries and chances, but you waited too long to settle. You waited too long to think that, um, oh yes, and I'm not even talking about material things like I drive a Mercedes, so he needs it. That's stupid. Your Mercedes can break down. That means nothing. But if you are a praying wife, if you're a praying woman, if you are a intercessor, if you are on your knees every day for hours praying to God, do you really want a husband that hasn't prayed more than 5 minutes in his life a day? Do you really want that as your husband? Do you really want your husband? Like, do you really think that that's who God has for you? Do you really think that that's God's best for you? A husband is only who only goes to church on Sunday and that's it. That he gets his Jesus in that little 90 minutes, from 9 o'clock to 10:15, and then he's back to the world until the very next Sunday. Do you really think that God made you wait this long for that type of person? Do you really think that God, if you're someone who fasts a lot, you're someone who goes to God for everything, you live your life set apart, you don't watch secular TV, you don't listen to secular music, do you really think that because the guy's hot, God is going to give you that person? Do you really think that that is who God's best is for you? We have to understand unequally yoked is a lot deeper than just someone who is Christian or non-Christian. We have to understand it's much deeper than that. I was listening to a sermon. I forgot the woman's name, but she said something like, as iron sharpens iron, we have to be, you and your spouse, you guys both have to be iron sharpening iron. So if you have two knives, right, and you go like that, you're sharpening them, they're making them better, right? And that's what Proverbs 27:17, I believe. But when you're thinking that, you can't be a sharpened knife and then marrying a spoon. And I'm not trying to make fun of anyone, and I know that analogy is funny, but a knife cannot sharpen a spoon. Or I'm sorry, a knife can sharpen a spoon, but a spoon cannot sharpen a knife. A spoon, if you scrape a spoon on a knife, all it's going to do is dull out that sharpening. And that is what you're doing when you are not marrying someone that God has for you. That is what you're doing when you are not marrying your equal. And I don't mean like you need to make $1 million a year, he needs to make 1 million. Yes, that would be amazing. That's not what I'm saying though. I'm saying spiritually, that is the thing that makes more sense than anything, than physical attraction, all of that stuff. Spiritual attraction, you have to make sure that you're equally yoked spiritually. I'm not saying that someone can't come up to your level. I'm not saying that someone who just got saved last year can't meet you at your level, even though you got saved when you were 7. I'm not saying that that person can't meet you on that level. But what I'm saying is we have to watch out and we have to wait for that special delivery. That is why it's taking so long. That is why you can't just go in the grocery store and just, I mean, you can, and just get the cake off the shelf and go home with it. And yeah, it'll temporarily fill the needs, but it's not going to be like, dang, this is that cake I was waiting for. This is that bite. You're not going to have that same feeling, right? So I want us to understand that we have to be equally yoked with the thing. It's with the person that we're trying to be with, and thinking of going back to the analogy of like two knives sharpening each other, even if we don't even say a knife and a spoon, think of an axe. A piece of wood can't sharpen an axe. An axe will cut the wood down, it will cut it in half. So you have to be equal with your match. You can't be shallow and him be deep. He can't be deep and you be shallow. Um, you have to understand that you guys have to complement one another. You guys have to mirror each other. You guys, one can't be here and the other here. It's just not going to work. And that is why you're waiting on the special delivery. Okay, that was totally not on my notes. That was Holy Spirit. So thank you, Jesus. Let me get back to my notes. So I wrote, you can get a store-bought cake, but it's not going to be custom because custom takes time. Now, I wanted to read a verse to you guys, and this verse is such a good verse, and it's about Jesus when he's talking to the Israelites when they're getting ready to basically be destroyed because they're a hot mess and wasn't listening to God. It says, this is Isaiah 60, verse 22. It says, the smallest family will become 1,000 people, and the tiniest group will become a mighty nation. Now, this line, at the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen. This verse is so, so, so important because it says the smallest family will become 1,000 people. Right now, looking in the natural, it looks like you probably have nothing. Right now, it looks bleak. It looks like, okay, God, I don't know how you're going to do this, but let me know. It looks like that right now, right? But you have to understand that God can do anything and he can do it in a suddenly. God does not exist inside of time. Time was for us. Time is not for God. God exists outside of time. So what has taken, we'll just say, your best friend, I don't know, 5 or 6 years to get married, have her 3 children. Now they're in kindergarten, preschool. God can do all of that in a suddenly. God can introduce you to your husband tomorrow. God can introduce you to your husband today. You can step out your front door. Someone can be lost looking for, apartment 152 or something like that. And he comes to your door instead. You can go downstairs to check your mail, and the new neighbor is checking his mail at the same time. You can go to your front to go, you can go to your neighbor to drop off cupcakes, and her grandson is in town for the weekend. You never know. God can do things in a suddenly. Just because it took someone 15 years to get married does not mean that that's what God's going to do. And I'm only saying this because I can just use myself as an example. I'm 34 and I'm like, well, if I'm going to have kids, like, God, you're going to have to make this thing hurry up. And it can be very discouraging thinking like, I'm 34, if I want to have kids before I'm 40, like, I got to meet somebody. It's going to take at least 2 years to get to know that person. And then I want to spend time with just my husband. So that's going to take at least 2 more years. I'm going to be 38. And then I can probably try to have kids. But by that time, I'm going to be old and have a geriatric pregnancy. And that is fear filling your brain. That is the enemy putting those thoughts in your brain. And you have to learn to rebuke those thoughts. You have to learn to get rid of those thoughts. You have to understand that that is not of God. God can do things in a suddenly. I can meet my husband walking to the trash can right now, this second. We can fall in love in a week, and God can allow us to get married by next weekend. I don't know. That is how God works, though. We have to believe it. So if you're listening to this right now and you're like, girl, bye, you on something, then this message isn't for you, and you can stay petty and you can stay bitter. But this message is for those who believe, those who want to understand who God is, what God says. So remember, God can do it in a suddenly. He says, at the right time, I, the Lord, will make it happen. And at the right time, we have to remember Isaiah 55:8. His ways are higher than our ways. In my head, I should have married at this date, that date. I should have had this many kids, whatever. But in God's head, he knows, yeah, but if I would have given you a kid at this age, you wouldn't have met this person and you wouldn't have been um, this key person in this life, or you wouldn't have been in that person's life, or you wouldn't have gotten this thing accomplished because you would have been doing this. So I can easily sit and try to dictate my own life, but I have to understand that God can do it way better because he created me and he knows my first day on earth and he knows my last day on earth. Prayerfully, it's in the rapture. But so I wanted to just share that verse really quickly, and then I have a couple more verses I want to share. So I wrote about calling the bakery. So, like the example I gave, um, if you're requesting a cake, so now you're like, okay, I don't want these stale little cakes that the store already has, right? So I'm gonna go and buy my own because that's me. So you go and you buy your cake, right? You're not going to keep calling the bakery. You're not going to keep making sure, like, did you put enough eggs in it? Did you put this in it? You have to trust the baker. So I want to read Proverbs 3:5. Everybody and their mama knows this verse, and if not, I'm going to read it to you. I'm reading out of the NLT. It says, Proverbs 3:5. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. So with everything inside of you, every fiber of your being, you have to trust in the Lord. And the next part, the most important part, because you can't do the first part if you don't do this. Do not depend on your own understanding. Your own understanding, 99% of the time, is what gets you got. It's what gets you caught up. It's the thing it's the fear, it's the doubt. That's when you're leaning on your own understanding. My own understanding is there's no way I can meet somebody this year and marry them. The year's almost out. But God didn't tell me that. I could meet someone. But my own understanding is there's no way I can meet someone in the next how many days do we have left? Like 60 days? I don't know. There's no way I can meet someone in the next 70 days of this year, right? That's me leaning on my own understanding. That's me leaning on what makes sense in the natural. But remember, we serve a God who does not, he bends the rules. He does not do things in the natural. We serve a God who died on a cross, and then 3 days later, he rose up. We serve a God who touched somebody with spit or mud, put it on their eye, and that person was healed. We serve a God who allowed a woman to touch just the string, the fringe coming off his garment, and she was healed. We serve a miraculous God. So if we don't believe that what God did in the Bible, he can still do today, you have some explaining to do with your faith. We have to collect our faith and we have to understand what God is saying. We have to understand that God is leading us to a different level. We have to stop leaning on what it looks like in the natural. We have to start believing in the supernatural. We have to understand and believe what God is saying. And if God is saying to not lean on your own understanding, but to depend on him, then that is what we must do. So just like we wouldn't call the baker and we wouldn't sit and ask how many eggs she's putting in. Is she using this type of flour? Did she sift it first? Is she using a hand blender or a stir? Or is she using a mixer? It's the same way we aren't to call God and say, well, you said you're going to give me a husband, but I don't see him. So what are you doing? We're not supposed to do that. It's none of our business. Once you give it to God, it is in him. So my next verse I want to read is we have to understand that God is working even when we don't see it. And going back to the baker analogy, if we told the baker we want a 3-tier cake, chocolate on the outside, I don't know, vanilla on the inside, insert your favorite cake however you want it. If we told God that the baker, if that's what we wanted, and we know it aligns with what we're supposed to have, meaning this husband that you're wanting, he aligns with you and your mission, the mission that God gave you, which is the same for all of us, go and make disciples, right? If we told God that we need a man, we need our husband to help us, we need our helpmeet, we want to come alongside and help someone. If we're doing it without selfish ambition, if you're just wanting a husband because you want to have sex and you want to take cute pictures, you missed the mark. But if you're doing it because you're like, no, God, I want to do this ministry with my husband. I want us to bring, I want us to bring people to you. I want our marriage to reflect your love. We want to be good examples and good stewards, and we want to raise a beautiful family. If that is your goal, that is in alignment with God, and he will deliver it. So it's the same thing like with the baker. If you don't see it happening, that does not mean they're not working. Just because you're not standing at the counter just looking over like, oh, let me see what you're doing. Oh, is that Mike? No, I didn't ask for cake pop. That ain't it. Just because you don't see it does not mean it's not working. When you're at home, you're not sitting at home thinking like, all right, well, I hope she knows to put extra icing in that cake because that's how I like. You're not at home thinking that, right? You trust the baker because you know that's what a baker does. So we have to do the same thing. Why do we sit and we think like, you know what, God, I know you love me, but I know you care about me and you want the best for me, but I hope you're not giving me an XYZ because that's not what I'm supposed to have. Like, why do we have so little faith in God? Why do we really think that God has made us wait so long and he's going to deliver something that it's not going to line up with what he knows you need, right? So the next verse, the first verse, I'm sorry, this is the verse I wanted to read and I should have read this a while ago, but it's okay. We are going to go to, I can read it in here. We're going to go to 1 John 5:14. 1 John 5:14. So 1 John 5:14. And it says, I'm reading out of the NLT again. It says, and we are confident that he hears us whenever we ask for anything that pleases him. Going back to what I just said, if it pleases him, we are confident that he is going to answer. If we're wanting a marriage because we want to have sex, and that's it, that's all. He's not going to answer it. That's not glorifying him. I mean, it is, but it's not glorifying him if that is your only reason for wanting a marriage. If you're wanting a marriage because you want to take a vacation, you want to take super cute pics, you don't want to eat alone at restaurants. If you're wanting a marriage for those selfish things, you got some you got some praying to do, and you need to kind of look at yourself and see what's going on. But if you're wanting a marriage because you want to do kingdom things, to you want to push his kingdom further, you want to bring more things out of the kingdom, and you want to basically, what am I trying to say? Lord, help me. You want to further God's kingdom and you want to advance the kingdom. He hears those prayers. It says, and we are confident that he hears us whenever we ask for anything that pleases him. And since we know he hears us when we make our requests, we also know that he will give us what we ask for. So, same thing, going back to the bakery example. If you go to the bakery, you stand there, you're like, excuse me, okay, I want to place the order. Here's my name, yada, yada, yada. I want this cake, da, 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 whatever. And you give her the slip, she got it. She heard you. She's going to deliver it. She's not going to say, like, oh, my bad, we ran out of flour. No, it's a bakery. They're going to deliver it. And it's the same thing with God. We have to understand that God is going to deliver on his promise. God is going to deliver. And then I want to finish up with, like I was saying, God is always working. John 5:17, he says, the Father is always working, and so am I. That's what Jesus says. He is always working. Even though we don't see it, he is working. And then John 14:1. John 14:1 says, hang on. John 14, verse 1, it says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. This is Jesus telling us to understand. Do not worry. Don't focus on what's going on the outside. Trust that God is going to do it. If you don't trust that God is going to give you your promise, that's okay. Start with something smaller. Trust that God is going to give you something small, whether it's lunch the next day, whether it's breath the next 5 minutes. Pray and slowly work on your faith. Slowly get your faith from here to here. You have to have a strong faith in order to believe these things. So I just wanted to share this. I literally thought this video was going to be like, I don't know, 3 minutes, and here we are at 30. My bad. But I just wanted to share this example because God gave it to me and it was so good. So just think about the example of the bakery. God is that great baker. God knows what you want. You told him. You've been praying to him, right? It says in Philippians 4, it says, pray about everything. Let your supplications, let your prayers give thanks. Let your requests be known to God. And he who hears it, he will guard your heart. He will give you a peace. So understand, you gave it to him. It's in his hands. So now that the request, that thing is off your task list. So now that he has it, understand that he can do it. Understand that he will do it. But lastly, most importantly, do not micromanage God. Do not micromanage God. When you micromanage God, that's you showing you don't trust him. That's you saying you doubt him. That's you saying you don't believe what he's saying when you micromanage God. So do not do that. You are doing him and yourself a disservice, because when you're micromanaging God, you're not waiting well. When you're not waiting well, that is how everyone around you is getting all their things answered before you, because God is still working on you. God is still teaching you a lesson. You don't know how to wait patiently? All right, bet. She doesn't need this husband right now because she's going to walk all over him. The second she asks him for something and he says, okay, I'll do it, and he doesn't do it immediately, she's going to pop off and go crazy. That is what God is seeing. He's going to see that you're not waiting well and you need another lesson in the wait. And Lord knows we don't need no more lessons. So wait well. Learn to wait well. I'm going to go because we are literally at 30 minutes now. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email. Just respond to this video or DM me on Instagram at Authentic Culture Co. And do me a favor, share this video with 5 of your girlfriends. Share this video with 5 of your girlfriends who have been waiting, who's just like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. Share this video and post a snippet of it on your Instagram and tag me, Authentic Culture Co. So Authentic Culture CO. Share this video, tag your friends, send it to people, and reply back to this video and let me know what you got out of it. And I will see you guys soon. Love you. Bye.